Hey everybody, welcome to the 1804 show, chapter 2. I'm your host, Dollar Will, and this is another episode of 1804 History. Yeah, I wanted to do this tonight because of the fact that I've been researching this all day. So I just wanted to, come on here and give y'all this painful story, but also it's a story of redemption. I just think that the story is remarkable because it's still happening every day. And how a man, well, two men, um, Rubin Hurricane Carter and John Arliss, who was wrongly accused of a triple homicide. And again, it just makes you mad knowing how the justice system works and how they would just pick two innocent people because of their dislikement for him. And race always plays a part. And I always tell people this, like, I don't think all white people are bad. I think the good white people definitely is few when it comes to these type of situations, because it took a white family from Canada and a whole lot of good people to allow these two men to be vindicated for the crime. And when I tell people this, like, you would never get time back. No matter how much money that the state gives you, you would never get that time back that you served when you was an innocent person. You know, jail is a place that I would never want to be. And hopefully I can navigate through life without ever having to experience that, because it's remarkable that this man went through all this injustice, racism, hatred, just all because of the fact that he was a boxer and he did things his own way. He was a man's man, and you couldn't really tell him what to do. You couldn't intimidate him and stuff. Because back in them days, this was the mid 1960s America, and everybody was practically segregated and, just stood in their place. But this man just refused to, follow that trend and go through those type of things because everybody else went through them. But pretty much he was a man who never gave up on his innocence. He knew one day he would be released because he knew that the truth was always going to prevail. 1 second, please. Drink my juice. So basically, he was out one night after a fight. They were celebrating a win, and he met John. And John offered to take him home because he'd been drinking and stuff. So they get into a car, and then they get stopped by a whole lot of cop cars. And they was told to, come with us. We need you to identify yourself to these people. So they go to the local bar where a triple homicide had occurred, and they looking around like, so we're suspects, and they was like, yeah. So they went to a hospital afterwards and asked the man who survived, because he was fatally wounded. So they asked him, was these the man that shot y'all? And he was like, no. So they go back to the station and being questioned. And then they was asked to take a lie detector test. And they both passed. So the movie, The Hurricane, didn't show that particular scene. And pretty much they was like, kind of skip past it because they ain't really get arrested until 4 months afterwards. And I wish they would have kept that part of the movie because it would have made more sense. But they was being pressured, like from the mayor's office, from the captain, from a little bit of everybody, that we need an arrest. So they went back and got John and Rubin and charged them with first-degree murder of all three people. So in the trial, they didn't really hear about the lie detector test and none of that. So they kind of disregard the evidence. They really didn't present it to the prosecution, nothing. And these two men was found guilty of murder, and they were sentenced to life in prison without parole. So both men went to the same prison. They went to Trenton State Penitentiary, and they started to do their life sentences. You know, John was young. He was, I believe, 19 years old at the time, and he pretty much complied and stuff like that. You know, he never got in trouble, any of that. And it was crazy because, like the guards and the warden went to his cell every year to visit him and tell him, like, we will let you go if you will tell us and put on record that Carter was the main ringleader of the crime, or he was in charge of everything, and we would let you go. And he pretty much said no, because my parents never taught me to lie, and that's not what's going to happen. So he stayed 22 years until he was eligible for parole. But Rubin, on the other hand, the first day he got into prison, he went to the hole because he refused to put on the clothes of a guilty man. So he did 4 months in the hole, and well, the first time in solitary confinement. But he was in there for years, repeatedly, because he had just a chip on his shoulder. He was angry because, you know, how y'all gonna frame me and then gonna make me wear clothes of a guilty man? I refuse to follow your rules. I refuse to live by your standards. So he was always being locked up, and the longest that he was locked up, it was 6 years in solitary confinement. So the moment he was able to get into general population, he started to read books. He started to go into law. He started to look for ways to get his appeal going. So he wrote a book while he was locked up. He wrote his autobiography. And with an eighth grade education, he was able to establish his autobiography by himself. And he sent it out to people who was wanting to publish it. And just so happened, in Canada, a young kid named Ezra Martin picked up his book, and he was so profounded by his story, he wrote them back, and they wrote back multiple times until he was able to go visit him. And he said that that was the nerve-wracking experience that he ever had. And after his visit, he made a commitment to himself that he was going to help get him out, because he felt like this was a frame. He was framed. Both of them was framed. So while he was living in Canada, because he was able to live with a few college students who got him off the streets of New York and taught him how to read, really just adopted him. And all three of them made a decision to come from Canada all the way to New Jersey. And they made every day to the point that they was going to get him out. But it was just a lot of things that was going on with them, because once the city of East Patterson found out while they was there, they was getting death threats. They had a bomb in their car, all types of stuff. They didn't want them there. They weren't welcome. And Rubin told them, like, I told y'all what's going to happen. So it was just mainly just like a whole lot of corruption going on to keep him locked up. And just so happened that they had to go back and interview witnesses of the crime. A lot of the witnesses were dead except only a couple. And in the movie, it was this detective that they said that they he'd been harassing him since he was a kid, but come to find out that wasn't true. Somebody already debunked that, but it was the truth about the same detective that pretty much forced his signature. And that's how he knew that it was an inside job to keep him locked up in prison. But while he was in jail, popular singer Bob Dylan came to visit him while he was incarcerated and let him hear the demo of the song about him called The Hurricane. And I think that was pretty dope, to have a popular singer who was pretty big at the time do a song about you, free of charge. And Muhammad Ali and a whole lot of people got involved of making sure that he was vindicated and really rallied up behind him. And it was just a lot of stuff came with that. So luckily, his final appeal was granted. He was told that he was going to have another trial. So instead of state court, they went to the Supreme Court. And he knew that this was his last chance to make something happen for himself, to get his freedom. So this time they had a legal team. They had a jury of just mixed people of color, white, black, Hispanic. So this was really like a great thing. And after spending 20 years locked up, he was rewarded his freedom. He was granted a not-guilty verdict, and he was released from prison. So after he left, he moved to Canada with the friends that came and got him and stuff like that. And then he also became like a motivational speaker, and he set up a foundation for the innocent rights, to help people get out of jail and stuff like that. So he set up organizations to help people who were serving time or people who served time to make sure that they get vindicated. And he was just one of those men, like, because when you realize, like, when you get your life taken from you, especially when you ain't do nothing wrong, it makes the time being in prison a lot harder, a lot harsher, especially when you know in your heart that you didn't do anything. You just being set up because you have to deal with certain bigots and stuff like that. And just to think, like, he was on his verge of being middleweight champion at that time. So they had everything against him. They was going to make an example out of him because they didn't like how he carried himself. And they saying that because he had a record that he deserved to be falsely imprisoned. But this happens every day. This still happening today. A lot of us are being locked up for crimes we didn't commit. It's just like that movie Life. That wasn't no movie. That was real life. It just put it in a comedic way, but this happens every day. And he was never compensated. He didn't reach a settlement or nothing. He just left. But one thing I loved about him was the fact that he wanted to help other people. He wanted to give back. He never forgot where he came from, or he never forgot what it felt like being locked up like a caged animal. But it just was like a lot of people was just counting him out. All because he was black. He was a man's man. He was an alpha male. He ain't take no shit from nobody. So, of course, he was going to raise some eyebrows. So they had to get him out the streets, But yeah, he was born... Hold up, give me 1 second, everybody. He was born on May 6, 1937, and died April 20th, 2014. Let me see. His boxing record, total fights, 40 fights, wins 27, wins by KO 19, losses 12, draws 1. So he would have been probably like the Money Mayweather, in his time. He was charismatic, he was smart, he damn sure was brutal in that ring, because I was able to watch some of the film. He was quick, strong, powerful, and he had a chip on his shoulder. And he left behind a wife and 2 children. And he passed at the age of 76. But yeah, he's just a really remarkable person. Him and his friend John, who also passed. And You know, it's just a sad story because you just never know what can happen. Because sometimes you just out minding your business, and then just so happen you a suspect in a murder case, and you get your whole life stripped away from you because of the fact that certain people just hate your guts, just want you to just suffer, want you to rot, and that's not fair. That's not right. You know, it just it just makes you look at things differently. It makes you have a different perspective on what can happen if you're not careful. Now, if he was home, then maybe all that would have happened differently, but sometimes in life, man, God allowed things to happen to test you. And he sure was tested. He was tested to see if if um if he was going to break or he was going to give up. He was going to lose his faith, but he ended up passing with flying colors. So rest in peace, Rubin Hurricane Carter. Rest in peace to your friend John. Thank y'all for your contributions on this earth. But yeah, I'm going to end this story. And thank y'all for watching, who all watched and this and that. Because one thing I know people are going to do is watch. But other than that, I just thank all my real supporters, man. Because I just really know who's for me and I know who's faking and this and that. People just be watching your every move and this and that. But other than that, I'm good. Because the show is going to keep going and growing. So make sure y'all subscribe to the YouTube channel, man. The 1804 Show Chapter 2. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Please, if you're looking for more history stuff, I have a playlist. So y'all enjoy. Y'all have a good night. One.